In 1975, when Tiendo had come through the meetings that started in Los Angeles and then went to San Francisco Bay Area and then up to Old Port, Oregon, and then they went over to Colorado. We did 6 meetings in Colorado area, in Boulder and Colorado Springs and Denver and a few other locations in that metroplex. And then we went to Chicago and all met at basically the way where we were staying during that time period were in tents in campgrounds and in the national in BLM on BLM land and national forest and the reason why we were staying in these places was because that's where Tiendo were staying when they first started giving the public meetings that were spontaneously organized. And the reason for that was several-fold. There was no financial backing. It enabled Tiendo to have some privacy and have some space to themselves. There was no intent on creating an organization that would basically form what is called a church, a building, or to where they could start having people gravitate to, because people were leaving everything behind. They were leaving their lives behind. Which was actually what one of the essential aspects of being caught away from the world, to no longer be a part of the world. Worldliness and the pursuits of humanness was all about, and that was actually the first sense of rapture, being pulled away from the world. And we were pulled away from the world because we needed to experience actually being under the wing of the older members, if we wanted to be in there, be students, full-time students, because this wasn't going to be something that became a course in a university. Tiendo, right from the beginning, wanted to leave. They also thought that, at first, that departure would work better if we were in a remote location. Although they realized later that the next level can make a remote, they can basically surround the area with clouds and come in and take us no matter where we were. But so when they stopped the public meetings, which was well after Chicago in '75, which came to a close in April of '76, they said that the harvest was over, and they put word out to the groups that were centrally organized through contact points at hotels where we didn't stay. We just used like the Holiday Inn to leave messages for people. It was pretty amazing, actually, the way that took place. Tiendo told us to gather in Wyoming, in the National Forest, in the Medicine Bow National Forest, Vidavoo Campground in particular, and we were camped all around, not as one unit, because there were a little less than 100 students then. And so they had us spread out because we didn't want to raise eyebrows, and because you could basically, if you were a group, they would want you to get a group permit. And also there was a limit to how long you could stay there, so they tended to have us kind of hide away, and we moved camp frequently so that we didn't look like we were staying there for a long period of time. So why were we in campgrounds? because that was the modus operandi of not being attached to the world, not being committed to the world, and it was practical. T and Do were always very practical. It enabled them to have a unique setting to where they could begin the overcoming process. The overcoming process starts with leaving everything behind of the past, and that includes our attachment and our root system to the family structures. Everything has to actually be detached from. That's where the original idea came from of the Buddhists' detachment, because they were pulling from a past Kingdom of God classroom. Whenever that happened, I don't know if that happened in a previous civilization or that was happening simultaneously to what Jesus was doing, because Jesus said he had another flock to tend to, and that both flocks would come together in the end days, and in a new land for a new nation that was not going to be the Middle East, because that's where they were at the time. Anyway, so that's my best recollection and understanding of why we were in campgrounds. But we weren't in campgrounds where we had facilities all the time. Much of the camping we did was renting private lands off of ranchers. Huge ranch lands that and we had a modus operandi in later years of being a research team, because we were doing a lot of research in reality, but that was kind of a cover in order to be legitimate with a rancher who, if we told them we were a cult, would see if we had could be arrested or whatever or run out. They wouldn't rent the land to us, so we couldn't tell them that, and we weren't really a cult in the sense of doing harm or abusing or holding anybody against their will. So we didn't want to put up a front of being illegitimate to the mainstream. So that's why we were in campgrounds.